Let me bring in members of the audience for a few more comments. Yes. Yes, sir. The gentleman in blue and then the lady. Yeah. Please give him the word. If we have time, we'll come back to you. Yes.
Okay, my name is George Diary. I'm a content creator and social activist. I actually sympathize with INEC, and just like every other organization in the country, because elections are really not easy to conduct in a country like Nigeria. And election season always reveals the fragile nature of our society. Just like the police, when they're in the spotlight, we understand that there's a lot of incompetence in our system. If we put some of you in INEC, you'll also be facing the challenges that they face when they have to conduct elections. So I think more than ever, we should invest in educating the people. Because if you go to areas like VGC, voters conduct themselves in orderly manner. Now you come to a place like Maraba, or you come to a place like Oshodi, you see the way they behave. So it's a question of education. We need to invest in educating people.
Thank you, sir. So responsibility of the electorate. Okay.
Good evening, all. My name is Halima Jubri. I'm an integrated marketing communication professional. I think that the Electoral Act that is before the National Assembly that has been sent to the President should be signed. And then the second part is that INEC should be run by somebody who is an expert in project management, because INEC is a project. And such a project that will be conducted for a country to have a president and governorship and National Assembly, whatever, is a very serious business. So whoever is not grounded in project management should never again be appointed as INEC chairman. And if the person is appointed, he needs to go take courses in project management. Otherwise, the person can never get it.
Okay, let me bring Mr. Okoye back here. I mean, people kind of listen to you and you heard someone there being very sympathetic to you. If you had your way and you could reform certain things as INEC, specifically, what would you be asking the federal government? What would you be asking of the National Assembly? What would you be asking of Nigerians?
Well, there are two things. One, I believe that Nigerians must accept the reality of the fact that the political elite in this country are becoming more desperate for power. We must accept that reality. When the commission is recruiting its ad hoc staff, the political elite and the political parties are also going to this ad hoc staff attempting to corrupt them. When we go to recruit collation officers from the universities, the political parties also go to the universities to go and find out who we are recruiting as collation officers in order to corrupt them. So, okay. Just a minute. Because I think that there are certain realities we must accept. When we want to deploy, we are ready to deploy. You cannot deploy in fragile communities without adequate security. Because the moment you attempt to deploy without security, you run the risk of exposing ad hoc staff to danger. So even if you are ready to deploy, you have to wait to make sure that the security content of your deployment is right. And when you deploy, you must also make sure that there's adequate security at the polling unit. If not, some political talks will go and smash the smart card readers and do some other
things. But Mr. Festus, we've agreed we know the problems. I'm asking you, if you had a magic wand and you were going to wave it to get things done, what are the things that you feel are essential, given your experience now, that must be addressed if we are to improve the quality of our election and the process?
One, we must address the constitutional and electoral framework for the conduct of elections. And one of the challenges I believe we must address is to alter two things in the Constitution. One, we must take a second look at the time frame or timeline for the filing and disposal of pre-election matters. The Constitution says 180 days in the court of first instance, 60 days and 60 days in the course of second instance, and the last court of the land being the Supreme Court. That gives you almost 10 months. And when you have that type of situation, it creates its own bottlenecks. So for me, the first thing we need to do is to retouch Section 285 of the Constitution and make it possible for all pre-election matters to be disposed of at least between 60 and 45 days to election.
Should we have a special court for specifically for, you know, hearing election matters and not allow the process to go all the way to different courts?
Well, I think that...
Okay. You know what? I'm
yes.
going to actually
yes.
ask you to just pause a little. We are
Very
going to have to take a break. When we come back, you can answer that question.
Very well.
Don't go away. Welcome back. Before the break, you were talking to us about some of the needed reforms with the judiciary. So very quickly, what needs to happen?
Well, I think that we also need a national conversation around the number of political parties we have in Nigeria and the condition for registration of political parties. I believe that the condition for registration of political parties in the Constitution is too lax, and the condition for the registration of political parties is also not too clear. It's slightly ambiguous, to the extent that you can deregister a political party today, and within a period of 30 days, that political party is back as a political party. So we need a national conversation on that. We also need what I call a duality of electronic collation and transmission of results, and a duality in relation to the manual collation we have. If we have a duality, it will prevent a situation where we have challenges at the level of the registration area.
Let me quickly call Fakui. And so what are the things that we can do to sort of identify, to resolve the big issues that we have identified, in your view?
I think one of the most important things, and Mr. Daya mentioned, is citizens ensuring that, you know, they understand they're the biggest stakeholders in every election, and they must act the part. We must ensure that we reverse the degradation of our weakened institutions that we have seen over, you know, the 2019 elections, especially in the case of security agencies that had become compromised. Because of that, that's why we suffered the loss of a lot of lives, and especially with young people. And you know, the biggest case study is what happened in Kano. We saw impunity by the police, and that needs to be addressed.
Now, when we talk about educating the electorate diet, it's a conversation that's been going on for a while, and it's not something that happens overnight. But you know, in terms of real practical things that can be put in place, I'm not suggesting voter education is important, but what are the things that we can do, either, you know, if you like, quick wins?
I think it's basically for citizens to accept that their food, their water, their health is just a direct result from these elections. The more we start thinking in that term, then they will not need the diet if Akuya to be doing voter education to them. Because we all grapple with it. If we don't have light, if we don't have good roads, and we are not able to link that directly to the electoral process, then there is actually a big problem. But I think what we also have to do to give citizens confidence in the whole process is to start talking about electoral accountability. Because when all these people who have perpetrated heinous acts, from the political class to our other ad hoc or permanent staff of INEC, to even citizens who have aided or abated in selling votes, in vote trading, if nobody is brought to account, then there is, and of course the security agents, who they have, in fact, they have made, they have put...
Part of the frustration, I guess, when we have this sort of conversation is that people would tell you that these issues are part of a larger decay within the Nigerian society.
But we can start somewhere, and accountability is the way. If, for instance, or as the civil society, we all monitor the prosecution of the over 1,000 people the police claim to have arrested so far, all the security agents who were involved in several of these acts, they are not ghosts, they are well known. People have been able to identify them. How do we kickstart a process and ensure that they are held to account? We do not allow all these issues to be swept under the carpet. For instance, the US, the EU, the UK, they've all claimed and said they've threatened visa ban on politicians who instigate violence. How do we kickstart a process and ensure that all the known faces we saw in Collation Center trying to scuttle the whole process are held to account?
Okay, so a few things we've talked about. The new Electoral Act, you know, in terms of just making sure that political parties are properly registered, reform of the judiciary so that the process is much shorter, education, bringing an end to impunity, accountability. Let me just quickly get Ahmed in here. No, I'll give you the last word, but I have very little time, so just let me just...
I think one critical thing, just to add to what she says, is media actually doing investigations rather than just reporting issues. So we have to know the people behind the story, right? So in some of these places, Rivers, there are journalists there who are on the field reporting these issues, but we are reporting issues in a way that says we are reporting press releases. We need to uncover some of the faces, some of the issues and what they are, so that then, as the evidence are there in the public, security agency and prosecuting agencies can make excuses to say we don't prosecute these people.
I mean, is it realistic for us to expect that we could get the Electoral Act passed before the end of this particular
in all honesty, I don't want it passed now, because the issues coming out of 2019, we are supposed to take recommendations from some of the issues going on now and say, Senate, can you look at 2019 election and then revisit the Electoral Act and ensure that we have an act that captures all these issues that came out of this election, and then we can send it back to the presidency.
Do you feel that way as well, or? Because I've heard people say there's still time, and if they wanted, the National Assembly could get this passed before they end this particular
No,
term
I think I agree with him. What is important is for us to start early. If we start early and have a new constitutional framework and a new electoral framework, it will aid us in going forward. Because I agree that there are a few things that needs to be incorporated into a new electoral constitutional framework for us to have a very, very good election. But more importantly, I think that we should also have an Electoral Offences Commission and Electoral Offences Tribunal to carry out the issue of arrest, investigation, and prosecution of electoral offenders. It is very, very important and is very, very critical because the existing legal framework for doing these things is haphazard. The police will arrest, investigate. Sometimes those who are investigating are on special mission, and then the Independent National Electoral Commission will prosecute. So I think that it doesn't sit well. But if we have a commission completely dedicated, very professional, dealing with some of these issues, we can break the cycle of impunity in the country.
Should we be looking to unbundle INEC?
Exactly. The Independent National Electoral Commission has gone to the National Assembly to say, take away the issue of prosecution of electoral offenders and give it to a separate commission and a separate agency and a separate tribunal to handle. So I do not think that anybody in the commission is insisting that the commission must remain the way it is. There are a few things that should be taken away from the commission and domiciled in a more professional agency and organization that can handle it and husband it properly.
One final question for all of you, and if you quick answers and then we end. Should we be appointing the umpire in the way we appoint now? In other words, should it still remain the purview of whoever is the president to decide the person who should, manage elections? And I have less than a minute. No. So a yes and a no.
No. I think it's a no. We should revert to the Waste Panel Commission report,
which says,
which talks about the NJC doing that.
Exactly. I agree with that completely.
I was a member of that Waste Panel.
Okay, and
definitely.
I stand with our report.
It projects a bias, it projects partiality.
Okay.
So
all right, well, we have run out of time. Thank you to our panelists and to those who came to the studio to take part. I'm sorry not every single one of you was able to speak. Unfortunately, time does tend to run away with us. Those of you at home that participated, thank you as well. And I'd like to invite you to join us next month for another edition of The Call. On behalf of Channels Television and Daria Media, my name is Kadria Ahmed, wishing you a very good evening.